A lot of people consider this to be cinematic. Sure, it may tick some boxes that some people are looking for to get a quote-unquote cinematic shot. But if you ask me, I really feel as if the word cinematic is such an overused word, especially in the age of social media. This significant term has been overused and abused to the point where the weight that it once had and carried maybe 50 years ago has really been diminished significantly. And I think the true problem is that it doesn't only affect the people that view the movies and have their criticisms about whether or not a film is more cinematic than not, but actually I think it might have even more of an effect on producers of video or cinema directors. Hey guys, it's Nelson. Welcome back to the channel yet again. Here to stay this time. Today I'll be making a video on something that I am actually very passionate about. That's all related to this one word, cinematic. But not so much about how to shoot cinematic footage or anything like that. I think I'll cover that in another video at a later point. But to first identify what cinematic looks like, we have to dive deeper into what cinematic actually means. I think in the social media age, the term cinematic is really warped. And I think there's been a lot of damage done to the community with this word alone, just with the way how this word has been misused. I feel like all the time on social media now, I see different videos about cinematic fonts, cinematic art styles, just things that don't necessarily make any sense, to the point where I sit there and just think, do we really know what cinematic actually means? Because I think the vast majority of people, when they see something that either has letterboxes, has super high camera resolution, has really smooth transitions, or is filmed with a super blurry background, I don't think people really understand that a lot of the time, these things are just gimmicks. The definition of a gimmick is a trick or device intended to attract attention, but most importantly, often with little intrinsic value. It's almost like having a paint job done on a car, but then all the internals are missing. It's then just a case. There's no seats, there's no steering wheel, there's no engine, so the car can't actually be used to be driven. Some of you may be looking at me right now and thinking to call cinematography a gimmick is completely insensical and that I have no film knowledge or any kind of qualification that allows me to say this. But here's one thing I do know. As an artist, I am very confident in the fact that cinematography, in fact, any type of art, is entirely subjective. You can't really have any kind of objective view on most works within the creative industry because it's all about beauty being within the eyes of the beholder. But the reason why I'm using the word gimmick is not because I think less than for some of these techniques that are used to describe the term cinematic. It's more about the fact that there's a lack of intentional reasoning behind some of these decisions. So the original root word for cinema comes from the French term cinématique. Please forgive my pronunciation. I'm not French by any means. But if you go even further back, you have to go back to the Greek kinematics, which directly translated just means science of motion. The best comparison I can use is like kinetic energy, the energy that is generated from movement. So then applying this back to cinema, a cinema is just really comprised of moving pictures to convey a theatrical story, hence the term theatrical film. We can then look at theatre performances as being the earliest stages of cinema, whether it's Shakespeare's Macbeth, whether it's Homer's Odyssey, or whether it's even Sondheim's West Side Story, whether it be costumes, whether it be stage effects, whether it be lighting, all these different things are used in a particular way to be able to convey a story through the means of motion. I guess this would then show that when it comes to cinematics or describing what a cinema experience is like, you can't take the visuals away from the story. Without one, you don't have the other. If either one is missing something, you can't have as high or quality of a cinematic experience. Now, I know I've just mentioned all this with having one and not the other, but I think the most important thing to focus on in a theatrical performance is dramatization. As human beings, there's a lot of us that actually live for drama. Some people who either instigate drama or love to watch drama in the form of TV shows, whatever way. But drama is even the difference between making a documentary and making a theatrical film. A documentary comes across as lacking that dramatization and feeling more factual and to the point, whereas a movie has a narrative and has a story that is trying to push, which is aided then by cinematic techniques. Notice that here I said techniques and not cinematics. They're two different things. Some of the techniques that help to improve the cinematic value of a film can include things like production budget, camera gear, sound, camera effects, CGI, slow motion video. The problem is that a lot of people are led to believe that if these characteristics and these techniques are done well, then the shot or scene is automatically cinematic. However, like with the description of the car, these things are just a shell. If there's no substance on the inside, some of these things can just feel random and unnecessary. But pairing these two things together, that's what makes something cinematic. Because whether you want to use the dictionary definition that I used or the definition that cinematic just means mimicking what you see in cinema, the problem is that it's all about what you see. It doesn't take into account the remaining atmosphere that is brought to you by means of audio, camera techniques, storytelling, the acting, the script. All of these different techniques that exist in the world of cinema come together as one to create a memorable and impactful experience that is not just remembered visually, but are remembered by the emotions you had while watching the movie, or the sounds that you heard, the script and the dialogue. These things have just as much impact on the viewer as the actual visual composition itself. A movie isn't just great because of the visuals. What makes it special is the atmosphere that is brought to you in your seat, causing you to feel what's being felt in the film and what's being portrayed in what you're seeing before you. Across cinema, there are many, many examples of this, and how cinematics is more than just what you see, but can also encompass other things. Across all of cinema, narrative is driven by the cinematic techniques surrounding it. Some examples are in Matt Reeves' Batman. In the first act of the movie, there's a scene where Batman's looking at the son of the mayor who's just lost his father. Music is used here. Something in the Way by Nirvana starts to play as Batman shares a moment with the child and sheds a tear because he sympathizes with the moment the child's just gone through, showing that he's more than just Batman, but he's also Bruce Wayne, the child with no parents. In Across the Spider-Verse, you have all the colors that represent the different universes, as well as being able to convey Gwen's emotions on her Earth in her own universe. And one of my personal favorites, in the movie Jaws, as Martin realizes that the shark is in the water with the dolly zoom, as you really get an insight into his mind realizing the danger that they're in. The dolly zoom there is used for such a few short seconds, but for me it's one of the most captivating scenes in the entire film, purely because the technique is specially used to connect you to the character. I think this really just shows more than anything that having a deep and personal connection to a movie through the means of cinematic techniques is what causes you to have a cinema experience which can be held whether you're in the cinema or at home. And by no means am I saying that visual techniques are not important, but they definitely are not the main focus of what makes a cinematic film a masterpiece. That lies deeper within narrative context and how the plot is driven by the cinematic techniques. Anyways, guys, I think I'm just gonna leave it there. I've talked long enough. I hope I was able to bring a better understanding and a more full context of why the term cinematic is overused, why they're not actually 100% incorrect, but rather that plot motion is just as important as the visuals. Anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap this up very quickly. Hit the like button down below if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be producing more content along this same kind of direction and other stuff as well. Feel free to look through my old content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.